If you're a fan of world-changing war stories, like this video now and comment below which city you're watching from, so I know where my stories are coming from. Have you ever wondered how an enemy reacts when they see a revolutionary weapon for the first time? Something that seems to have come from another world? Picture the scene. It's the height of World War II in the Pacific. The skies, once dominated by an unrelenting force, are about to witness the arrival of a winged nightmare. To Japanese pilots, accustomed to the deadly agility of their Zeros, what appeared on the horizon was an aberration, a war machine that defied logic and the very nature of aviation. With its two distinct tails, central body, and astonishing speed, it seemed to have come from the distant future, a machine from another planet. It wasn't just an airplane. It was a legend in the making, the P-38 Lightning, and the impression it left on the skies and in the minds of enemy pilots was terrifying. Prepare to delve into the story of how the twin-tailed devil changed the war, seen through the eyes of those who feared it most. In the early 1940s, the Empire of Japan seemed unstoppable. Its military forces were expanding throughout the Pacific, and its fighter aircraft, especially the Mitsubishi A6M Zero, were the embodiment of air supremacy. The Zero was light, extremely maneuverable, and in the hands of experienced pilots, virtually invincible in early engagements. The Allies were suffering, and Japanese morale was soaring. No one could have imagined that, across the ocean, a technological response was being forged, one that would change the course of history and shake the confidence of Japanese pilots to its foundations. The United States' entry into the war brought with it not only an overwhelming amount of resources, but also a capacity for innovation that would soon manifest itself in the skies. Imagine yourself as a Japanese pilot, accustomed to dominating the skies, suddenly faced with a completely new and unfamiliar threat. What would go through your mind at that moment? Initial arrogance would soon give way to a mixture of confusion, fear, and eventually respect. The American response came in the form of the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, an aircraft that was, to say the least, radical. With its twin fuselage design and two Allison V-1710 engines, it immediately stood out from any other fighter of the time. It wasn't just a matter of aesthetics. This unique configuration gave the P-38 a number of crucial advantages. It was incredibly fast, capable of speeds that outpaced the Zeros in pursuit or dives. Furthermore, the P-38's operating altitude was higher, allowing it to attack from above, a devastating tactic. But perhaps most frightening to the Japanese was its concentrated firepower. 450 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon, all mounted in the nose, ensuring a lethal hail of shells with each shot. While the Zero prioritized agility at low speeds and was lightly armed, the P-38 was a flying fortress, armored and robust, capable of absorbing more damage and still returning to base. The Japanese pilots, who nicknamed the P-38 the Twin-Tailed Devil, or P-San, couldn't understand how such a heavy aircraft could be so fast and climb so well. Can you imagine the psychological toll of facing an opponent that not only outspeeds you and outfires you, but also seems to defy every rule of aerodynamics, you know? The story of the P-38 Lightning began long before its devastating impact in the Pacific. In the 1930s, the U.S. Army Air Corps sought a high-altitude, long-range interceptor, one that could protect the continent. Lockheed, led by legendary engineer Clarence Kelly Johnson, accepted the challenge. The XP-38 project, as it was known, was ambitious and full of innovations. The twin engines equipped with superchargers and the cockpit centered between the two fuselages were cutting-edge solutions for the time. However, innovation rarely comes without its challenges. The development of the P-38 was marked by a series of serious technical problems. The aircraft suffered from a phenomenon known as compressibility in high-speed dives, in which the control surfaces lost effectiveness, leading to loss of control. Excessive vibration and overheating problems also plagued the early prototypes. Kelly Johnson and his team worked tirelessly, modifying the wings, adding dive flaps, and conducting countless tests and adjustments. Think of a time in your life when a surprise changed everything, like an unexpected challenge at work or in a game. That's how the engineers felt trying to tame this machine, and that's how the Japanese pilots would feel when facing it. A surprise that changed all the rules of the game. Thanks to this persistence and ingenuity, the P-38, from an audacious and problematic design, transformed into a formidable war machine, ready to redefine aerial combat. The P-38 Lightning soon showed its true colors in the skies of the Pacific. In 1942, as fighting intensified over Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands, Japanese pilots began to encounter this peculiar machine for the first time. The initial shock was palpable. Accustomed to aerial combat that resembled a sword dance, where the Zero's agility and maneuverability were paramount at low speeds, they encountered an adversary that refused to play by the same rules. The P-38, with its superior speed and ability to operate at high altitudes, employed boom and zoom tactics, diving down on Japanese fighters, unleashing its devastating weapons, and before they could react, climbing again, using its acceleration to escape. For the Japanese pilots, this was a frustrating and demoralizing tactic. The Zero, despite its legendary agility, could not keep up with the P-38 in a dive or a rapid climb. They saw themselves as prey, unable to engage the enemy on its own terms. Many contemporary accounts describe the confusion and fear that spread among the Japanese crews. They wondered, how do you combat something that seems invulnerable and refuses to be caught? What would you do if you were in the cockpit of a Zero, watching this bizarre and deadly machine approach, knowing your usual tactics would be futile? Only experience and courage could dictate your reaction, but technological superiority was a cruel limiting factor. The P-38 quickly became a feared enemy, a twin-tailed devil that haunted the skies and the minds of the Rising Sun pilots. As the war progressed and encounters became more frequent, the Japanese perception of the P-38 began to evolve. From a freak or strange monster, it transformed into a serious and respected threat. They learned that, while the P-38 was fast and powerful, its maneuverability in tight turns was inferior to that of the Zero. Tactics were developed to try to lure the Lightnings into slower, tighter-turning dogfights where the Zeros might have a chance. However, American P-38 pilots were instructed to avoid these dogfights by maintaining their speed and altitude advantage. The P-38's ability to fly long distances, protecting bombers on missions deep into enemy territory, and its versatility as a fighter bomber only increased the respect and awe it inspired. One of the most iconic moments that solidified the P-38's status as a legend and a fearsome adversary was Operation Vengeance. In April 1943, a formation of P-38s, utilizing their impressive range and low-altitude flight capability to avoid detection, intercepted and shot down the plane carrying Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of the Pearl Harbor attack. News of Yamamoto's death shook the Japanese command and demonstrated the P-38's lethality and strategic reach. This event was not just a tactical victory, it was a devastating psychological blow. How do you think an army reacts when its leadership is eliminated by a weapon it had previously underestimated? What city are you seeing this from? Comment if anything like this reminds you of a family story about innovation or conflict. I'd love to hear how these stories connect to your life. Respect for the P-38 was now undeniable, and this forced the Japanese to rethink their aerial combat strategies. They began adapting their own fighters and training their pilots in new tactics to try to deal with this threat. The twin-tailed Devil was no longer just an aircraft. It was a symbol of Allied innovation and resilience, a machine that had forced the enemy to adapt or perish. Could it be that the true test of a technology is not just its ability to win, but to force the enemy to rethink everything they knew and change their own way of fighting? The tactical evolution that the P-38 provoked on the Japanese side is a testament to its profound and lasting impact on the war in the Pacific. They had to adapt, and quickly. The Japanese response was not only one of desperation, but also of ingenuity. Japanese pilots, under the pressure of facing such a different enemy, began to develop new combat doctrines. The priority was no longer pure dogfighting, but survival and the search for more favorable conditions. They learned to use cloud cover, conduct surprise attacks, and avoid direct combat at high altitudes. They tried to lure the P-38s into low-speed dogfights, where the Zero's agility could still be an advantage, but American pilots were trained not to fall into that trap. Tactical innovation was not unilateral. The Japanese honed their defense and evasion techniques by studying the P-38's attack patterns. How do you think the need to adapt to a completely new threat shapes the strategy of any conflict, be it military, sporting, or even a personal challenge? This constant dance between attack and defense, innovation and adaptation, is what defines the evolution of combat. The P-38 not only changed the hardware of warfare, he forced a complete rethinking of how air warfare was fought. But beyond tactics, the P-38 left an even deeper mark on the psyche of its fighters. The presence of the twin-tailed devil in the skies over the Pacific created a climate of constant apprehension. For Japanese pilots, who once considered themselves unquestioned masters of aerial combat, the P-38 represented both humiliation and an existential threat. Imagine the feeling of helplessness when facing an enemy you couldn't reach, who outclassed you in almost every way, and who could hunt you from a safe distance. This technological superiority not only resulted in material losses, it eroded morale, undermined confidence, and instilled paralyzing fear. Many accounts from Japanese veterans describe the P-38 with a mixture of terror and respect. Think of a time in your life when a surprise changed everything, like an unexpected challenge at work or in a game. That's how the pilots felt, certain that with each takeoff, the Lightning's unpredictability could be their final adversary. The legend of the P-38, fueled by Allied victories and Operation Vengeance, turned it into a specter in the sky, a constant reminder of the enemy's technological advantage. And so, the story of the P-38 Lightning ends in the skies of the Pacific, but its legacy echoes to this day. It wasn't just a warplane, it was a game changer. It challenged the conventions of military aviation, introduced innovative tactics, and most importantly, shook the confidence of an enemy that once seemed invincible. Its speed, altitude, and firepower, combined with its almost alien design, immortalized it in the collective memory, especially from the Japanese perspective, where it became a symbol of a relentless and unattainable threat. The twin-tailed devil proved that technological innovation, when well applied, can have an impact as devastating as individual courage. It reminds us that war narratives are multifaceted, and that understanding the perspective of the other side enriches our understanding of the events that shape the world. It not only won battles, but changed the way battles were thought of, leaving an indelible mark on the history of aviation and warfare. If you enjoyed uncovering the secrets and fears of the P-38, how about we explore other fascinating stories? Let us know in the comments which one you'd like to see next. The saga of the Yamato, the largest battleship ever built, the mystery of the Foo Fighters sighted by pilots during World War II, or the rise of the Me-262, the world's first jet fighter. If you're looking for more untold stories of aviation legends or wars, be sure to subscribe now and hit the bell so you don't miss a thing. Share this video with a history-loving friend and help spread the word about these epic tales.